Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for Ignite's Innovation Webinar Series. We are very excited to be here today. I am Dr. Juliette Breeze, the founder and CEO of Next Level Urgent Care. And we're talking about my favorite topic today, which is business and how to survive and thrive in the business world. And we have been presented with uniquely challenging times over the last couple of months. And everyone wants to figure out, how do we use this crisis to our best advantage? So today I have a special treat in that we have 4 dynamic panelists who are coming from different areas of the healthcare spectrum, and we're going to be exploring ways in which they've responded with action during the turbulent times that we've just been through, and how they're leading and how they plan to lead as we move forward. So during today's session, we're going to be presenting the panelists with questions that we received from you all, from the audience, the registrants, and we'll try to cover as much ground as we can in this next hour. So without further ado, I'm going to have our panelists go ahead and tell us a little bit about themselves and their businesses pre-pandemic. So Anna, why don't we start with you?
Oh, wow. I didn't know I was going to be first. But thank you, Juliette, for inviting us to speak in this panel. So I'm Anna Valladolid. I'm a commercial banker with JP Chase. You know, I know many of you are familiar with us as a bank, but in my 20+ years at JP Chase, I've seen the firm, you know, really transform into a global technology company focused on digitization, and R&D solutions that, you know, really respond and in many cases are ahead of the changing consumer demand and behaviors. And aside from technology investments in our platforms and, you know, through acquisitions, we have also leveraged our broad expertise to align clients to advisors that really understand the dynamics of their specific industry. And in so many ways, I feel very fortunate to be able to work with healthcare and life science companies, many of which are startups like yourselves, and especially in critical times like now. And so there's so much I've learned from them, and what I've observed over the last couple of months is just considerable perseverance and discipline that really makes me feel optimistic that companies in the space will find their way out of these turbulent times. And I'm sure many of you are also very familiar with our annual healthcare conference. And I would say that coming out of this year's event in January, there was tons of optimism that you know, activity and funding would really remain healthy, and it certainly has. And as expected, there was enthusiasm in platforms that are ancillary to the healthcare services space, continued interest in companies that have the ability to change the cost curve through solutions addressing things like chronic disease management. And of course, excitement around growth in digital health as consumers look to apps and online services for their healthcare needs. So I would say pre-pandemic, you know, there was a lot of energy with our analysts and you know, clients, many of them recently embarking on commercialization and entering the new year. We were really excited to continue working with these early stage companies on their growth plans.
Well, thank you, Anna. And I think that actually, you know, your discussion of these new companies and these new ways of engaging with patients is a perfect segue to introduce Kristen Valdez. So Kristen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Juliette, for having me. BeWell is a connected health platform that works with healthcare stakeholders to digitally transform their experience with consumers. As we know, consumers have great expectations around digital service and experience, and healthcare has, quite frankly, fallen quite short. So BeWell is an off-the-shelf platform that is designed to help hospital systems, insurance companies, employers, pharmacies be able to focus first on consumerism and align to the key performance metrics and goals of bending that cost curve, helping to connect consumers not only to what their needs are from a data aggregation perspective. We are the leader in consumer-led interoperability. So we help collect and aggregate all healthcare records from across the spectrum on behalf of consumers. And we use that to personalize, helping to educate consumers on when they need care, including evidence-based medicine guidelines, and then proactively driving them into the system, making it easy for them to select between in-person, virtual, and digital care, and matching them to healthcare solution providers. Because as consumers in the US market, we simply don't shop for healthcare services because we view healthcare as something that really happens to us, and that we really focus on when it's an acute need. And we're really trying to transform that conversation to holistic healthcare, both at the time that you are acutely a patient and also during the times when you're not. When you need to be focused on prevention, and making sure that people understand the complexities of who pays and how benefits are paid for, and making sure that consumers understand them. So really being that first screen mobile application that manages all your healthcare in one place that consumers don't have today, that's persistent and portable and stays with them for life. So we work with our entities to help provide their goals, manage the cost curve, and at the same time provide consumers with a significantly better overall consumer experience. But I appreciate you having me on the panel today, and look forward to the conversation.
Wow, that's just amazing, and it's so exciting, all of the new things that our patients and the world is actually getting exposed to during this time, and you've got perfect timing there. And maybe we can move to Zawadi Bryant, who's really using some of these technologies and really on the front lines in taking care of the consumers these days. Zawadi, you want to talk about yourself a little?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Zawadi Bryant, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Nightlight Pediatric Urgent Care. We have 8 locations throughout the greater Houston area, and we also serve Texas patients all over via telemedicine. And so pre-pandemic, our business looked a lot different. We just did the traditional bumps and bruises, ouchies and boo-boos that kids experience. We're open after hours, weekends and holidays, so just a convenient complement to the PCP's office for the kiddos to stay out of the emergency room. And so we have had an interesting time pivoting our business, which I'm sure we'll get into a lot of detail later on in the discussion, that everyone has experienced through this. But you know, we're all in healthcare, and so we understand the importance of changing and being flexible to meet the needs of our patients. And so I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
All right, well, you guys are playing right into my evil plan here, talking about meeting the needs of patients. Daniela, why don't you tell us about your company and about yourself?
Sure. So thank you, Aisha, Julia, as well for having me on this panel. So I wear 2 hats. I am a partner with Newport LLC, which is a strategic advisory firm that is focused on middle market companies and helping them thrive and grow. And one of the services that we provide beyond strategic advice is interim C-suite services. And in that capacity, I've been my second hat, which is as CEO of CX Precision Medicine. And right now I'm a fractional CEO, but I am moving into being a full-time CEO with them September 1. So that's the 2 hats on this call. CX Precision Medicine is a company that is developing blood-based screening test based on biomarkers to be able to rule out Alzheimer's disease. And then we have a pipeline of other types of neurodegenerative diseases. So right now, it is incredibly expensive and difficult to diagnose Alzheimer's, and it is typically quite a number of tests are taken, and it's really expensive. And we have a blood-based test that will make it a lot easier for primary care physicians, not so much to have a positive diagnosis, but to have a negative diagnosis and to be able to say, okay, we can eliminate Alzheimer's. And if it's positive, it's not, you have Alzheimer's, but kind of like a positive on a mammogram, we now have to do additional tests and it therefore justify the other expense. So this is an early stage company, but it has been built on really 15 or 20 years of work in NIH funding. And so we're actually very close to commercialization and look like we'll be having revenue in the next year. We've licensed one of our first products to a very major partner, which is one of the things that happened during COVID for us. And so pre-COVID, I think Newport, we had to really pivot to working much more virtually with our clients, where usually all of us were on a road going to networking events, everything else. And so that has been a big change. We can talk more about that. But I'd say pre-COVID for CX Precision Medicine, we've mostly been able to keep accomplishing, but with a lot less. I was going to Fort Worth every other week all the time and just being there, and we've all had to adjust how we were able to do that.
Now that we've sort of learned a little bit about all of you, and many of you have mentioned already the word pivot. So I kind of want to delve into that a little more. I'm sure our audience wants to hear the lessons learned and the unique ways in which you all have approached your businesses or your business relationships and pivoted during these times. So, Zawadi, do you want to start with that one, and we'll make our way around again?
Sure. Yeah. So related to the pivot, so telemedicine, we were doing telemedicine for a couple of years before the pandemic and didn't get a huge response from our patients. I, as a mom, used it all the time. But starting in April, like our telemedicine visits just skyrocketed. Obviously, everyone was home. And so for us, that was a welcome change because we feel like telemedicine is a major part of how we can, again, be more convenient and flexible for the patients to see them where they are. And we're just seeing that just continue, like more patient driven. I think someone earlier mentioned thinking about like what drives the patient engagement, the patient experience, and telemedicine I believe is going to be a bigger part of how we deliver medicine moving forward. And so we're doing our visits now are 50-50 in clinic and then 50% on telemedicine, which is a huge change for us. And secondly, I'm sure Dr. Breeze, in regards to testing, we are doing a lot of COVID testing. And so I don't know necessarily if that's going to be a major part of our business moving forward, but it's driving a lot of the demand right now. And so we've had to really change a lot of our interaction, our protocols and procedures, and how we engage with patients and protect our environment, protect our employees. There was a mad race for PPE in the initial stages, and making sure we have contactless registration for our patients and things like that. So we've had to improve and increase the way we communicate with our patients in regards to how they check in, how they get the information about their COVID tests. So we've had to beef up our technology in those areas. And then lastly, I would say our expansion across the whole state of Texas, that's been a huge boom for us. We weren't doing that before. We would just focus on the greater Houston area. And now, now we're seeing patients across the state of Texas, and now we're seeing the limitations of telemedicine because we can't bring them into the clinic if we need to see them. And so now we're forming partnerships with other providers outside of Houston in the event we need to refer patients after telemedicine visits. So it's constantly changing. We're doing a lot more, I feel, engagement with the patient as well as with the larger healthcare community, because we can't see people and we can't touch people. And now it's the communication, the engagement, getting to know providers in other cities and knowing their practices that we feel comfortable referring patients to them and things like that. So I think those things are going to stay with us because, again, I think patients are now demanding that we are engaged in getting them the care that they need, beyond just them coming into our clinic. We're now going out to them.
Wow. Talk about a pivot. That's a pretty major change in your business. Now, I guess I'm really interested to hear from Kristen whether this really was a pivot at all for you in terms of your business. You seem to be perfectly aligned with what ended up happening. Is that the case?
Yeah, I would say, pre-pandemic, digital transformation was something that was considered to be innovative. And the innovative stakeholders who were moving first were the ones who were hiring, chief digital transformation officers and others. With the global pandemic hitting the country, we saw firsthand how our health systems, our large health systems across the country, were losing collectively billions of dollars because they were not open. They were unable to do elective surgeries. So we have a configurable platform that's designed for consumer experience. And pre-pandemic, we were working on configuring the platform for things like smart discharge planning, remote patient monitoring, more advanced scheduling and triage to the appropriate providers first hand. When COVID hit, we very rapidly had to transform the platform and configure it to meet the needs of what COVID was presenting the country with in terms of challenges. So we quickly had to configure the CDC triage and symptom checker for COVID. We had to geolocate people based on where they were, which is not necessarily at home or at work anymore, and make sure that we could help them find test locations, make sure that we could help them find and connect to telemedicine benefits. And we saw very quickly a transformation in the data coming in. It may be alarming to you all, it certainly was to us, but when we looked at new prescriptions or prescriptions for anxiety and depression, we saw over 70% of medical claims and clinical encounters coming in were for new scripts that had not yet or not had previously been subscribed. So we worked on partnerships to integrate point solutions like Headspace and Calm and Ginger. And then very quickly, we've had to transform to now getting safely back to work for frontline and essential workers. We work with health systems and their employees, as well as employers across the country. And so making sure that employees have a place where every day they can check in and attest to the fact that they're not symptomatic, that they haven't been exposed to someone. If they are symptomatic, making sure they have instructions from their employer on when to stay home and what the requirements are to come into work. And as employers are thinking about, much like schools, A days and B days or morning shifts and afternoon shifts for capacity planning, making sure that we can take and new definitions of eligibility files and making sure that people from a personalization perspective know with very certainly what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, when they should be reporting to work, when they shouldn't, what the check-in procedures are. And as you know, these rules are changing minute by minute, day by day, depending on the region and location where people exist. So while we always anticipated having to transform and configure the platform to keep up with the speed of innovation, we never imagined having the opportunity to test that functionality as rapidly as we had to with a global pandemic situation. So it has been fast and furious for us, but at the same time, we have really grown our pipeline and our sales significantly during the pandemic because digital transformation is now essential. It is no longer a nice to have for those health systems and providers, that are closed and didn't have telemedicine stood up, didn't have remote patient monitoring stood up or any of the virtual codes. They really lost out on revenues that they could have been earning even in a time of closure. So it's been certainly a wild ride for us. I think it's a long way from over, but we're extremely pleased that the configuration of the platform can adapt instantly to the needs of the populations we serve.
So actually, I think it'd be interesting, Daniela, from your hat of being a consultant, to maybe comment on some of the things that Kristen's bringing up, but also then, you can kind of tell us if anything changed in CX.
Yeah, for CX, sure. So wearing a consulting hat in my Newport partner hat, Newport has, we have about 60 partners nationwide and clusters around different regions. So in the Houston area, we now have 6 partners, and we each have our own clients. We pretty much cover all the industry groups. And frankly, one of the things that it's done for Newport, which I think has been terrific, is in many ways it's brought us together more. In the past, we would in Houston get together physically just to coordinate on clients and serving our clients, and those having a glass of wine once a month went out the window. But we now have more sort of virtual calls. But it's also allowed us to have a lot more training and discussion sessions, both across industry groups. And we started with a twice a week COVID call, which one of my partners here in Houston in the energy practice, Lynn Lignecki, has been leading, just so that we can advise our clients on knowing exactly kind of what's going on, what are the guidances. Obviously, a lot of calling to banks and people like Anna on PPP loans and what it means and forgiveness. And so just being able to provide better client service. And at the same time, it allowed us to focus on some things that people had been wanting to focus on for a while, but they didn't have the time to. So we've pulled together a really terrific signature offering, the sort of a value acceleration model, pulling together different things that people around the firm have been working with. And so I think that its revenue had not dropped as much as people had thought that it would perhaps would, and now I think it's allowed us to create tools. On CX Precision Medicine, the thing that I think has been the most interesting, and we're a small team, so with the managing employees, all of the things that Kristen and Sawadi, you guys have talked about, that's not so applicable to us. But I think what's been interesting from a healthcare standpoint is the concept of direct-to-consumer marketing. So when you think about prescription drugs, and probably about 10, 15 years ago, it became popular to start advertising directly to consumers. And all of those commercials that we're all tired of seeing, that go see your doctor and then read all the horrible side effects of the drug along the way. That had really transformed the pharmaceutical industry. And as we were looking at cementing the partnership with our lab company, partner, and that had not been done yet, I met with them in person at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. And we talked about distribution channels and adding our tests to tests that they're marketing for primary care physicians and scaling up and all of those normal things. And I asked about direct-to-consumer approaches. And in January, this company, and it's one of the leaders in, I can't say who it is, but it's one of the leaders in the industry. Their answer was, well, we're really conservative industry. We really have not been doing very much of that, and we don't really see reaching out to consumers. And sure, you can get pregnancy tests over the counter, or there's, Cologuard. There's a lot of tests that you can mail in results, but those aren't really sort of the things that go through physicians. That has totally changed. Fast forward a number of months, our last call was, how are we going to roll it out, reimbursement, scaling, everything. And we have really learned a lot through COVID in the diagnostic industry of being able to go directly to consumers and all that. So that has been a really big change. It's totally pivoted the marketing approach that we're looking at using as we're, looking at rolling out. So it's interesting.
So Anna, we haven't heard from you, and you have a very different kind of position in this ecosystem. So tell us about what the, not just the pivots of your clients, but how your business itself has changed with this sort of new reality.
Yeah, so I think in many ways, even though we are a company of 300,000 strong, we in many ways have the same kinds of experience as small, scaling up kinds of companies. And it's really interesting. Even with the PPP program, us sitting in the commercial bank, we've never had to execute on SBA loans because that's really in our business banking retail function. And so the fact that now in 2 weeks, we have to, get everyone's applications in and, submit these things to the SBA and work with, every other bank out there to get this done for our companies, it really turned us upside down. But it had shown that, with a united effort. Everyone can come on board, define processes, and get things done really quickly, and it's for the benefit of our clients. And so that was really important. I think the customer engagement was really important as well. Keeping tabs of where everyone was, what help they needed was really critical, and was the focus of those really critical times in the March timeframe where we were starting lockdown and wanting to make sure that all of our companies were in good shape. And so we, made it a campaign to just reach out as much as we could to ensure that any help that we could provide, we did. But I would also say that for the companies that we support, it was a pretty interesting time, because you'd think that everyone would be panicking about keeping their products moving through the FDA process, or keeping up with their commercialization plans, etc. But we were getting a lot of phone calls about cybersecurity. Now is the time when all the fraudsters are out, right? Because there's money in motion, and people are really everyone's guard is down, and they're dealing with other fires. So cybersecurity questions and education was a big deal, which, to all of us might seem like such a small thing. People were rethinking their balance sheets, how much cash they have on hand, what they can do to really firm that up. It might be too late now because we're in near zero interest rates, but they're starting to think about what their investment policies look like, and really, if something like this were to happen or be elongated, how are they going to survive and work with the capital that they have? And it was also a reassessment of basic providers like legal and accounting. There were a lot of questions around the PPP program that us bankers are really not equipped to answer. And so, we would say, go back to your accountant or your legal counsel, and they really didn't feel the confidence that they needed to in, some of the guidance that they were receiving. So I think that some of those basic things really came to light during the pandemic, and really, allowed people to step back and think about some of the foundational and infrastructure challenges that they were experiencing, and how they can avoid that in the future.
You bring up such a great point, and it is actually, maybe you are the answer to one of our registrants sent in a question about, it was really a leadership question about where you all are getting your ideas, and how who are your advisors, and how are you figuring out these fabulous pivots that you've been talking about. And I think, Anna, it kind of sounds like you might be one of those advisors, but do you have any other thoughts about answering that question for the registrants? Just where do we go to be fabulous leaders during these very disruptive times?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer for that, but what I've been seeing, and I'll leave a lot of that up to the other panelists, but I think what I've seen is just your board members and your, whether it be a scientific advisory or your other advisors that might not be, have voting rights, but just the people that are very close to you. I've seen during this time also that there have been additions, really significant additions to these groups that people are putting in place to help bolster visibility and, just connectivity, because I think that people are seeing that coming out of this, they're going to need a lot of help to ensure that they can keep up with the momentum and acceleration that they need to make up for some of the lost time that they had. And having some of these critical members as part of their team, can provide a lot of insight that helps them, meet those accomplishments.
Kristen, as a younger company, this is actually a pretty interesting question to ask you, because a lot of people go out of the starting gate and they don't have that group of advisors all set up and ready to go. So who has helped you? You've come up with some fabulous ideas during this. What have you done?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, the market need is extremely transparent to us given the broad customer base that we have for the product. But where as a leader, I needed to find inspiration was in what peers and other companies were doing in this time to support their own employees. And I think, I've always been a very avid reader, making sure that I understood what was happening across the ecosystem. But I would say in these times of COVID, I have become more obsessive about that, making sure that I am spending dedicated time in the morning, right when I wake up, which helps actually, believe it or not, inspire my day. And then in the evenings before I go to bed, I spend a lot of time. And on social media channels as well, who are the thought leaders and those that are really pushing their ideas through Twitter, through LinkedIn, not just people who are holding, webinars, but where are the opinion pieces and the blogs of what people are doing. We've really had to transform our work environment. We actually gave up our physical space. So we, BeWell does not have a physical location right now because we didn't see the point in paying rent for lease space for a time where we knew we weren't going to be going back until it was absolutely safe for employees. We've always had a flexible and unlimited PTO policy. We really believe that people can manage their time and balance between family, but we also have a lot of young parents who are on the team, who are now educators and parents and employees all at the same time. And I think that's a burden that you really can't put on anyone. So having to think about flexibility and things of that nature. So it was very important to us to continuously look at the culture of the team to keep them healthy, to add benefits like adding mindfulness and meditation applications paid for by the company, helping folks find resources and care in their areas where maybe they couldn't and didn't have the need for it previously, but with daycares closed and schools closed, it's been a challenge. And so, I would say for us, the bigger pivots for us have been more in how we work and how we manage our employees. And I say I find a lot of inspiration from, talking to as many people as I can, but there are just some really great articles and papers and blogs out there that I have found and subscribed to that have been very helpful to me through this time.
So Daniela, are you getting more hits as a Newport board member because of these times, people looking for advice, or, how is that, does that correlate? Are people, more likely to?
It's a little bit of both. On one hand, all of the trends and things we've talked about on connections, people reaching out, both to existing clients, potential clients, and then just friends and networks overall. And before, we wouldn't be able, if we had it, we have used Zoom forever, but the percentage of partners that took the time to call into an all Zoom call, you'd have, maybe only half of the people on because people are at their clients, they're working. And now everyone is still working, but they're working at home and they can schedule their time much more. So on one hand, you've had a lot more sort of moments of connection with people. On the other thing that you're seeing, and I think this is sort of changing as the reality that this is not leaving is happening. I've seen within the healthcare space, and Anna, you probably have too, it's harder to close deals. And that's the case whether you have been raising money as a company and you've had conversations and trying to get that closed, or whether you have clients that you've gotten to know, prospective clients, you've talked to them on the phone, you've done a bunch of Zoom calls, but actually kind of closing and having an engagement closed is just a new reality I think people have to adjust to. Because I think even a month or two ago, there was sort of like, okay, fine, let's get together in person once this is sort of over and we'll have a chance to meet and more business as usual. And now people are starting to say, boy, I'm not so sure about that. If that's going to work out, we better kind of jump in. And I know in my own case, there's a couple of board positions that I've been discussing with people and that had started before the pandemic, and then it got put on, well, why don't we hold, and then when things open up, we'll fly you out and you can meet everyone. Now it's a little bit like, boy, we could really use your expertise. Maybe we'll just go ahead and do this even if we haven't really met in person. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, Juliet, but.
Actually, it really does. I think that sometimes in the these really uncertain times. I mean, you've got this dichotomy. You've got people who know they need good advice and they're looking for people to help them, or they're looking for, like Kristen says, books, or, Anna's got, the accountants and the bankers. But, at the end of the day, they also are really unsure, and they're not sure whether they want to go ahead and commit to any one way of getting that knowledge.
And the fee, and paying people. So yeah, absolutely.
So Zawadi, tell us about how you've found your inspiration. Who are you getting advice from?
Yeah, I think it's been a wonderful time to reconnect with people that you didn't have time to connect with before. And so I am part of a few different support groups or CEO roundtables, and they have just been a tremendous source of not only inspiration, but also accountability, because just to be quite frank and honest, like, it's been exhausting. It has been truly exhausting to look at your business. And, we were having a fantastic year, the beginning of the year, and just to see it drop so tremendously and to have to transform the business, constantly be present for your employees and your management team, and be the cheerleader and be the visionary, and then just be the parent and all of that. It's just been a good, safe space to be in these groups that, I've been a part of for years, and to check in and say, I'm not doing well today. And for everyone to say, me either. So that has been a tremendous asset for me, and a source of, okay, I can plug in there no matter how I show up, and then know that when I leave there, I'm going to feel tremendously better, and get pumped up with, some inspiration, some great ideas. I was on a call, and I just had my brain was cloudy, just didn't seem, I couldn't really kind of think out of the box or think clearly or anything. And I checked into one of the calls, and I just put the request out there, and they just went to work and started brainstorming and giving me ideas and suggestions. And at the end of the call, I was like, okay, I have clarity. I have like 2 or 3 things that I can take action on. And, it just pumped me up. I was like, yeah, and so I think for me, yeah, the reading, I've been doing a lot of reading, reading articles from LinkedIn has been fantastic. Twitter has been great. I think I'm subscribed to a lot more news feeds than I normally would have. But then that gets overwhelming sometimes too, because there's just so much to read. But again, for me, the inspiration has come from kind of those check-ins in a safe space, in a group that has great advice and wants to see you grow, wants to see you succeed. So I think everyone should have a group like that somewhere that they can check in with.
Oh my gosh, it sounds like we're leading parallel lives, Zawadi. I probably need to join every group you're in, but actually, I think you bring up a really important topic, which is really how it's not just motivating ourselves and keeping ourselves on track, but our own employees. And as leaders, you are all sort of facing, these challenges, because as we're exhausted, so are our employees, and facing all kinds of challenges that no one ever thought they would, like homeschooling children that they had been used to sending off and all of that. So Kristen had brought up a few things when she was talking about advisors, about things that she's done for her employees to help motivate and keep them inspired. And Kristen, maybe I'll bounce it back to you to kind of elaborate a little bit, and then talk to the others about the same topic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the first thing we had to do was look at time management, because we knew that we were not able to accommodate, folks who all of a sudden had multiple full-time jobs, being a parent, being a school teacher, being an employee. It was also a good time for us to really think about reorganizing in a virtual environment, looking at all of the meeting schedules and what meetings really needed to happen and were all the people who were in them really necessary for them. How did we create just the space of more time? How do we keep a pulse with the employees? So we started having, regular stand-ups. We meet with the entire team once a week, really quickly, just to kind of run through where people are, and we created various Slack channels that we have never had before. So we knew that there was a social aspect that was missing to not being in the office and environment, and we use Slack for a lot of internal communications. And so we started asking people to just contribute with things like things that they were interested in. And so as a result, we have a travel channel and a gaming channel, and we have a cooking channel, and people can join those channels as they want so that they can still get the social attributes and get to know their coworkers, especially since we've doubled in size since the lockdown occurred. The initial lockdown has occurred. And so over half of our staff never got to meet anyone in person. They were all hired and brought on virtually and digitally. We have also made sure that, we made it okay for people to not be online 24/7 throughout the day. And so we actually created a Where's Waldo channel. So people can say, hey, I'm, taking a walk, and I will contribute regularly and lead by example that, hey, I'm having a hard time focusing on this deliverable. I'm going to go get a quick workout in, take a shower, and then I'll be back. So I want people to realize that they have the flexibility and that their mental and behavioral health, and, that it's okay to say, hey, it's homework time. I'll be back, after I get, my kids started on X, Y, or Z, that it's okay. And so we needed to really establish a culture where people could see each other and not feel like they were alone and taking time off like they were a failing employee if they had things they needed to handle or take care of. So we make sure that everyone understands it's okay to take that time. And then we're constantly reevaluating, our benefits and our offerings. We did put together little, COVID survival packages and sent them to all of our employees by mail. So they would have a neat little surprise by mail. I know a lot of friends are always watching for the Amazon box to show up, and it's the highlight of their day, buying things they didn't need. But at the same time, we wanted them to have nice surprises. So letting them know that the company cares. And so sending them, some workout equipment at home, a Be Well branded mask, mugs for their coffee, for when they're on the Zoom. And so we do little fun things like that. And we found that that's really helped keep the employees in touch, that we care, that they can socially interact, and that it's okay for them to continue the culture of understanding they can take care of themselves first.
Anna, I'm gonna move to you next, because I think your employees are also mostly remote, right? Are you? Can you? I think we're gonna do the remote, and then I'll let Zawadi tell us about the not remote. But Anna, tell us about your employees.
Yeah, so a lot of us, I would say that we are still not being called back to the office across the U.S. Global is a different story. They're starting to make their way back, but I've always been sort of remote because I travel a lot. I meet clients. I cover the whole South, so my territory is pretty vast. But I would say that in times like these, and you mentioned it really well, Kristen, I think the culture is really what's important. And sometimes you lose sight of that. I've been with the firm for 23 years, and I never really felt the power of the culture and the teamwork environment as much as I have this time. So, just like what's been said, making sure that people aren't really feeling like they're tied to the phone. A lot of us tend to look at the phone the first thing we do, the first thing in the morning and the first thing at night, because we want to make sure that, our clients and our leadership team and everything is going to bed at night with a clear mind. But in these times, it's about leaning on people that are part of your team, that you work with very closely, and having the trust in that. And I'm even seeing that with the companies that I work with, where their resources are very small. They might have a team of maybe 5 people total for the company. And in the past, the CEO or the CFO were really the ones that were running the show and not letting anybody else really make decisions. And in these cases, empowering those those other teammates to run with different execution streams when other people are working on, facing off with the FDA or other regulatory agencies or whatever their roles are, investors, has really made that, I guess, team environment even more strong, both internally and externally, because we can engage more people, we can work on parallel tracks, and it also makes the people that have been working with that company happier because they're now part of the decision-making process. So that's kind of my way of seeing it. It's more of the culture and just the teamwork that, becomes very evident in times like this where you have to fall on each other to get things done.
Absolutely. Dingwalla, do you have a lot of employees? What's CX Precision?
No, CX does not. And so I don't have as much to contribute to this discussion, but I will raise one point, and it's the way that I built my last company. Life sciences has so many experts that are required that are specialists in particular areas. And until you're quite big and have a lot of money, you really can't afford to have everybody full-time, a traditional employee. So always this business has been done in collaboration with clinical research organizations, with manufacturing organizations, regulatory firms, different people that have different aspects of that. And that's just the nature of the industry. COVID, I think, has accelerated even that trend of using people who are fractional, who are maybe 1099 employees who are experts in quality or experts in clinical trial design or experts in whatever part they're experts in. And that's frankly how with Vapogenics, when I was heading the CEO of that is how we grew cost effectively. And that is the model that I've taken over to CX Precision Medicine, and that's how we're looking on adding people. But I think that openness that Kristen talked about of, okay, you're fractional, but you can have boundaries, and it's okay to say, all right, I have to be home because the kids have to get their homework done, but I'll get back to you on your email later. I think there's a lot more openness to that than there had been in the past. I've actually had that model for quite a while with my old at my old firm, but that was much more unusual. And I think it has to do with women in leadership roles as well. I think we are much more comfortable with multitasking and with being open about the robustness of our lives, of having kids and having parents. And yet we're professionals who get it done. You can count on me. It might be at 2 in the morning. It may be at different times. So I think that that trend has been there, but it's maybe been accelerated. That's a good thing for a COVID environment.
It's I'm sure Zawadi's thinking that maybe what I'm thinking, which is I'm jealous when you have employees that are essential workers and they have to come in. It's a little bit of a different thing. So we don't have that opportunity to necessarily be as loving and kind and flexible as we would like to be, because we've got a job to do, we've got patients to take care of. So Zawadi, do you want to talk about how do you keep employees motivated in that circumstance where you can't give them what they really like to have?
Yeah. So the blessing with COVID was that it did accelerate telemedicine. And so when all of this, the shutdown and the orders came, we basically broke down our employee roster, and we broke it down and had each of the managers calling our employees and had an assessment, like, where are you with what's going on? How are you emotionally? How are you spiritually? How are you physically? What's going on with your family life? Do you want to come to work? And so, we had like this whole matrix of, here are the employees that want to come back to work. Here are the employees that do not want to come back to work. And a lot of the employees had various reasons, had childcare issues, aging parents, or they have pre-existing conditions and were scared to come back. And so we had to figure out what that looked like. We were able to assign a lot of people to telemedicine shifts, the ones that did not want to come back into the office. And for those that did want to come back into the office, It's constant engagement and communication. I mean, I don't think in this environment you can there's no such thing as over communication. So we had already, again, had a culture where daily we do huddles and we have conversation about what's going on, you know, what would the numbers look like yesterday, what's new today. And in this environment, things change every day. So, you know, we were already in the practice of having daily huddles, but this is even more heightened need to have daily checkpoints with your team. And then one of our values is that we practice joy. And so now we do that even more so because we just want to inject some kind of levity and joy and laughter into the day with our team when we start the day. And so, you know, for those that have to come into the office, it's like, what can we do to make their day brighter? You know, our tagline is, we make your night brighter. It's like, well, how can we make your shift brighter? Because you have to come in, you know. And so I think we just, you know, thinking creatively, engaging with the team, you know, noticing when someone doesn't look the same or something's going on, actively engaging, having a conversation with them to see what's going on, seeing what we can do to help assist them. And it a lot of times it's simple if you just ask and inquire. So it gives us a lot more time, and we have to be a lot more intentional about inserting ourselves into people's lives. Like before it was kind of like, it's kind of like I'm them, you know, can't really ask these questions. And now it's like, we just give ourselves permission to ask, to check in on folks. And so because like you said, it's a scary time. It's a scary time for everyone. And so we have to check on our team and to make sure they're okay. And to make sure that, you know, we deliver great service to our patients. So our employees, our team have to be fine. Another thing that we've done is we've always had quarterly meetings where everyone comes together. We normally do that face-to-face. We've had 2 quarterly virtual meetings, and they've been fun. So we normally come together, we have a big breakfast. It's been a lot of fun. So this year what we did for our virtual meetings is we sent every team member a DoorDash gift card to order their own breakfast. And so 30 minutes before the meeting, everyone's posting on our internal Facebook page what they ordered for breakfast. And we're all commenting, oh, that looks good. Or, you know, oh, I should have got that, you know. And so like we're having engagement with the team before the meeting. And then after the meeting, what we do is we have a Q&A session for people to stay if they want to ask questions that they didn't get a chance to ask during the meeting. So, you know, again, just trying to insert ourselves and ask questions and to be open and available for the engagement with our team. And so those are some of the things that we've done.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. I would say that that we should do the same thing here with our panel. We actually had a really nice conversation the other day and inserted some joy by talking about how maybe more of the beneficial aspects of the pandemic, the things in which, in ways in which either the business or the society at large is actually better for having gone through this. And I'm gonna kick it to Anna first to tell us how she thinks that we have actually benefited from COVID.
I think 2 things. Just one, professionally, you know, like I mentioned before, I think it was really a test of the organization's culture. And like I mentioned, things like the PPP really turned our firm upside down in terms of trying to get things done fairly quickly in an environment that typically we don't do things very quickly, honestly. So, you know, it really showed one, you know, when you get a lot of people together to have one objective, you can make things happen. Like you can make miracles happen. And I would consider this one a miracle. And so, you know, it's that. I think it's also, you know, having faith in the processes and the kinds of things that you've invested in all these years. It comes to light during these crises. So, you know, like I mentioned, our company spends a lot of money on technology, and having these mobile platforms for customers to transact and to do things from a remote environment and not have to go into a branch really pays off and really accelerates that process. So I think that's you know, kind of one and a half things: culture and sort of, you know, finding joy in some of the investments that you made in the past. And I think just personally, you know, this time has really allowed me to spend more time with my family. I'm usually on the road a lot, or, you know, in the office, or just tending to various work things. And I've just learned so much about my husband, about my kids, and they're already in middle school and high school, so you'd think I would know everything, but it really just provided a time for me to step back and think about, you know, how they're growing up and what kinds of things that they need from me and that I can really change going forward. So always about going back to those foundations and thinking about how can you reset and recalibrate, so that you can enter the new world in a different mindset.
Coming in on our last 4 minutes of this panel. So my last three panelists are going to have to kind of tell us as quickly as possible about the benefits. So Dangwala, do you want to take it away?
Sure, I'll keep mine quick. So I think Anna did a great job covering all of it. So for me, I'll just pick up on the personal. My kids are all older. They are out of college for 2 of them, and 2 of them that are in college. And I agree with what Anna said. It's actually been wonderful getting to know my older kids as adults and in a different place, and everybody's been home. So my life got upended from being an empty nester to now having at times 7 people working full-time from home if my daughter's boyfriend is around. So it's a little crazy sometimes, but I actually think that part's been wonderful. Take it away, Kristen or Zawadi.
Take us home, Kristen.
Yeah, I'll flip it back to the business side of things. I think for me, having been in healthcare for more than 2 decades, the regulatory transformation of opening up healthcare during this time, I mean, we've seen 10 years of advocacy move through policy in a matter of weeks. We've seen a lot of focus in terms of a sense of urgency across the healthcare ecosystem in how they need to adapt things they always knew they needed to do, but now are getting very serious about it. And for the first time, seeing collaboration, making sure that it's not just a competitive environment, but that stakeholders are working together, creating new kinds of business models, but also transparency. You know, when one state is being hit and hammered very hard, how can other, you know, physicians and states across the country dive in and help? And so I think the collaboration has been one of the most positive things that gives me a lot of hope for the future of our healthcare system that I've seen since the pandemic hit our country.
Awesome. And Zawadi, any benefits?
Yeah, I would just echo the same thing in regards to just the openness to solve problems. You know, a lot of the barriers that we saw before in regards to big ideas in healthcare, that it was like, no, we don't do it like that. I think people are so much more open and receptive to like, okay, let's think about that. Let's get to work on that, because now, you know, it's necessity. You know, the mother of invention and innovation. It's like, we have to do something different. And so I'm really, really hopeful about healthcare.
I could listen to you all for hours more. You are so brilliant, and thank you so much for the insights and the interesting comments. I think it sounds like it's going to be a few more months or maybe longer for all of us. So maybe we'll have a chance to check back in at some point. But I do want to also thank our audience and let you know that this session was recorded. And so if you would like to go back over some of the comments and or refer it a friend, we will be posting this session on the Ignite website, which is ignitehealthcare.org. Also, I wanted to let everyone know that we have just opened up for our Ignite Madness, which is going to be a fully virtual pitch competition that will be taking place in October. So now we are accepting applicants through the website. And if you want more information, please visit the website and see how you can get involved. This is healthcare executives really interested in innovation, and we look forward to having you join us in the future. Thank you again, panelists, for the wonderful discussion, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you.